We are suing New York City and the teachers' unions for over $100 million. My name is Stephanie. Welcome to Teaching Liberty. And as you may or may not know, before I was making videos and posting them to the internet, I was a social studies teacher at a New York City public high school in the Bronx. That is, until I refused to comply with the city's vaccine mandate. Then I was considered a threat to public health, put on unpaid leave, and ultimately fired. So for the past nearly 3 years now, I've been involved in a lawsuit along with dozens of other former New York City educators against the city and against the unions for what we allege was their illegal implementation of the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. So in this video, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to tell you my story of how I got here, give you an update on the lawsuit, which just recently had oral arguments, and tell you why I think this is a battle worth fighting. So it all began back in 2016 when I began what I had envisioned would be a very long career teaching in the New York City public schools. I love my job. I love my students. I loved what I did. I was working extremely hard to perfect my craft, and it wasn't going unnoticed. I was highly rated. I easily attained tenure. And in that meeting, my principal talked to me about the path to administration because he definitely saw me in a leadership position. But in August of 2021, that all came to a screeching halt when then Mayor Bill de Blasio announced a vaccine mandate for all teachers in New York City.
All staff of every kind, principals, teachers, custodians, food service, you name it, needs to have at least one dose by September 27th. The entire staff by September 27th, at least one dose. And we know this is going to help ensure that everyone is safe.
Long story short, I was put on leave without pay and then ultimately fired.
Joining us now is Stephanie Edmonds. She's a New York City teacher who has decided not to get vaccinated. Stephanie, thanks so much for being here. As I understand it, after years of teaching, did you just teach your final class a few minutes ago? You just wrapped up?
I did just finish a class, so sorry if I'm a little bit emotional right now. I do have one more after this. But, you know, unless anything major changes over the weekend, it does seem like this will be my last class with the New York City Department of Education. It most likely won't be my last class ever.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, but I also hear that you are emotional. This, you say, has been the hardest decision of your life. So why aren't you getting vaccinated?
Personally, I have, a deeply held religious objection. I believe that this goes against my faith. It's a betrayal of my faith in God. And, for that reason, I've decided not to. But I'm speaking out today for teachers who have a whole host of objections, whether they be religious, medical, philosophical.
Now, the city would use different language to describe our separation, but in my opinion, I was fired, and I was given none of the due process rights that tenured teachers are supposed to get, even ones who hit kids or touch kids inappropriately. And when I found out that Randi Weingarten, head of the American Federation of Teachers, which is the teachers union I was a member of at the time, was going to be in Washington, D.C. at the same time that I was, I had to track her down and ask her why she didn't stand up for us.
Where are you from?
UFT.
Wow. Remind me your name.
Stephanie.
Do you know Eddie?
I'm sorry?
Do you know Evelyn?
No. I don't know if we've met. Hi.
Yeah. You don't know Evelyn.
That's great. I'm UFT.
I don't think you're from the UFT. You don't know Evelyn.
All right. You know what? I was fired for not getting the COVID shot. Former UFT, so you didn't stand up for us. Okay. You allowed us to go without due process.
Okay. You're not here to make a scene.
She asked. I was just letting her know.
Yeah.
We don't count, right?
That's what I'm saying. Now I understand.
Now you understand. You got us fired.
This is not the place, though. Okay.
It's never the right place when you don't have a good answer. And we're certainly getting more of that runaround from the union's lawyers in our lawsuit, which we will get to in a moment. If you're interested in watching the full interaction I had with Randi and her posse, you can click the card right here, or I have it linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, hit that like button so YouTube knows other people should see this video. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. Help me build something bigger and better so I can reach and teach more people than when I was a New York City teacher. And to that end, YouTube and these other platforms have their own algorithms and rules. And as you can see, I'm not always the best rule follower. So to ensure I can always reach you, join my mailing list at teachingliberty.org, or I have it linked in the description down below. Okay, so back to the mandate madness. It's been almost 3 years now. And in that time, we have seen people who were fired for refusing to take the shot get justice through the court systems and get huge settlements. A lot of people think New York City teachers won their jobs back because of headlines like this. And while we have seen some wins in court, the city has immediately appealed those decisions. No teachers have gotten their jobs back, and we certainly haven't gotten any monetary compensation. Personally, I used up all of my savings and more while I was figuring out what to do. I've heard stories of people who had to sell their homes, people who were on the brink of bankruptcy, people who had to take drastic measures to ensure a family member who had a severe medical condition could still access health care, and so many other heartbreaking stories because of what the city did with these vaccine mandates. I was only entering my 6th year, but there were teachers with 15, 20 years of experience, teachers a year away from retirement, teachers who had dedicated decades of their lives to this job. And just like that, they were put out. I am hopeful that there will be justice, but as the saying goes, it's a long road. And that is particularly true in a place like New York City, where we are bucking the political current and the city is broke. Nonetheless, we are fighting. There are many, many lawsuits ongoing, including the lawsuit that I'm a part of, Miraglia versus NYC. I, along with 50 other educators, are suing New York City and the teachers' unions, both the United Federation of Teachers and the Council of Supervisors and Administrators, for over $100 million. That's about 3 years of back pay per petitioner, plus other monetary damages, which varies from person to person. For more details, you can hear my lawyer on the New York Mandate podcast, episode 52, over on the On You Know Substack. The host, Amy, has been diligently covering our case, and really all of the mandate cases in New York, in a way that even if the corporate media cared to, they're not capable of. Okay, so let's get to the details of this lawsuit. Recently, on July 18th, there were oral arguments, so I went down to Staten Island along with a group of the other teachers who are named in the case to show the judge that there are real people behind these legal arguments being made. And I would say that's the most frustrating part about this whole thing, and probably of the justice system in general. There's a lot of technical legal jargon, legal standards, legal precedent, etc. And it just feels like those things fall short of doing justice for the real people who are really impacted. That being said, Amy does an excellent job of simplifying the legal jargon and summarizing the main points, so I'm going to rely on her write-up to go over what happened that day in court. Attorneys made oral arguments at a lengthy, and it was very lengthy, over 2 hours, hearing in Miraglia et al. V. New York City Department of Education et al. Attorney Austin Graff, that's my attorney, argued for the petitioners, 51 Department of Education employees who were adversely affected by the DOE's COVID-19 vaccine mandate, while 5 lawyers represented the respondents in the case, the DOE, the United Federation of Teachers, and the Council of Supervisors and Administrators. Those are the people that are supposed to be standing up for us, supposed to be defending our civil liberties. And yet there they are trying to weasel the city and the unions out of any culpability for these discriminatory mandates that totally upended our lives. The respondents, so that's the city and the unions, brought up a variety of procedural challenges involving standing, statutes of limitation, and res judicata. But there were a few central issues that the substantive arguments revolved around. Those have to do with the documents that laid out how the mandate would be implemented for the UFT and CSA members employed by the DOE. Those documents are known as arbitration awards because they were written by an arbitrator after the union went to arbitration when there was an impasse in their negotiations. Austin Graff, so our lawyer, argued for the petitioners that the arbitration awards were arbitrary and capricious and in violation of the law because the unions and the DOE arbitrator had no legal right to go to arbitration, and the arbitrator, Martin Scheinman, had no legal authority to create the awards. The unions breached their duty of fair representation by relinquishing their right to collectively bargain for their members and agreeing to accept the arbitration, and then failing to bring a legal challenge against the arbitration awards. The waiver that some petitioners signed under the mandate, waiving legal rights and agreeing to remain suspended without pay, was invalid because they signed it under duress. So just to clarify that last point, we were put on leave without pay, but we were able to keep our health care while we were on leave without pay. And so at a certain point, the city said, you can stay on leave without pay until September 2022 if you sign this waiver. If not, we're going to fire you. Many teachers needing healthcare for whatever reason, a family member or themselves. I know one woman was scheduled to get a double mastectomy. They had to keep their healthcare and they signed that paper. So in response to these arguments, the unions and the city argued, other court decisions have found that the mandate created a legally valid condition of employment, and the unions were unable to successfully challenge it. Nothing in New York City state law prevents unions and employers from choosing to use an arbitrator if they've reached an impasse in negotiations. The unions did their best to obtain protections for DOE employees under the mandate, winning the ability to receive an enhanced severance package, stay on leave without pay for a year with health benefits, and appeal rejected accommodation requests. And to really understand our lawsuit, you need to understand another case from February of 2023, O'Reilly v. Board of Education. The judge himself brought O'Reilly up, and the respondent's attorney called it a binding precedent, while Graff pointed out that O'Reilly did not specifically address Section 209.3F. In the O'Reilly decision, a panel of appellate judges ruled that the arbitration award was lawful and imposed a valid new condition of employment for tenured teachers. However, it's important to note that one of the O'Reilly judges wrote a partial dissent insisting that new conditions of employment cannot be applied to already tenured teachers, which I was, and all of the teachers in my lawsuit were, except by an act of the legislature. The DOE, he wrote, should have implemented the mandate as a work rule and followed the disciplinary procedure requirements of Education Law Section 3020A when it decided to fire employees for breaking it. That would have given them the opportunity to address the charges against them in a hearing before termination. In other words, it would have given us our due process rights that all other tenured teachers are entitled to. And while it may be true that that O'Reilly case has binding precedent, that case is not done. It's headed for New York State's highest court on September 11th, and I plan to be there. As Amy writes, the impending review underscores the fact that questions about whether the mandate could be imposed as a condition of employment and whether the arbitration awards that implemented were valid are still unresolved by the courts. These cases still have a lot of legs on them, and you better believe we are going to take this fight all the way. Following the court case, Amy asked for my reaction, and this is what I had to say.
Something that really stuck out to me was they kept bringing up the O'Reilly case, which has legal precedent over our case and other ones. And what that case deemed, from my understanding, is that the mandate itself that the commissioner and the mayor have the legal authority to make it a requirement of employment to have this vaccine, have the COVID vaccine. And that was done lawfully. That's what that case determined. And that's just like a big hit to you. Like, it didn't have to go through a legislature, didn't have, no city council, but they can just unilaterally decide that for this period of time, we're just deciding that there's a new requirement of your employment, and it's just for the next year and a half. After that, no big deal. And they said this because we were in a health emergency, and we have to keep the kids safe. All without regard to the fact that vaccine didn't stop transmission. All without regard to the impacts, the potential consequences to your own health of taking that. Both of those facts are very well established at this point. And again, I don't recommend anybody take the vaccine, but at that point, if the kids wanted to get the vaccine, they could have. So it could have been everybody's own individual responsibility to make that individual choice. But those things aren't litigated. They're not up for argument. And to a regular person, it just doesn't seem right, that the court can just sort of gloss over those facts. Something else that I thought was a pretty big deal was the fact that the unions were both like, well, we fought the mandate. We filed a lawsuit saying that this mandate is unconstitutional. But they didn't appeal. And they didn't really have a reason for why. The judge sort of suggested that it might have been a strategic decision that they made, which I didn't really think it was right for the judge to interject. He should have sort of just let them have an answer or not have an answer. But they were like, yeah, it was strategic. And I said it out loud. I was like, oh yeah, quite a strategy. Good one. It's like, your strategy is not to appeal and then enter into this arbitration process that just allows it to be implemented. And okay, they got a few things, right? They got the religious and medical exemptions, they got the health insurance, but those, it really, those were fake things, right? Everybody knows that the religious and medical exemption process was a sham. Everybody knows that the health insurance was a small little token until they ripped it out from under you and said, oh, now it's over, you're fired. I guess if you signed a paper, signed away your rights to sue, you could keep it a little bit longer. I actually never signed those papers, and for whatever reason, I kept my health insurance and wasn't fired until September 5th, that last date, so I don't really know how that worked out. But yeah, and then the other thing was they didn't appeal the arbitration award, right? There were many places where the union could have done more and could have gone further, and they didn't. And I hope that the judge saw that. I hope that that was made very clear. And then the final point that I'll make, and it's not necessarily a legal argument, but I think it's a very strong point that somehow translates over into voiding the arbitration award, is Scheinman's affiliation or connection to the city. He is a donor of the, what's that guy's name? The mayor, de Blasio. Yeah, his name.
Yeah.
He was a big donor to the de Blasio campaign, hosted a campaign fundraiser at his house, and then of course he gets this huge contract to arbitrate all. He was not just the person who arbitrated the deal between the union and the city, he was also the one who they're calling independent, who then arbitrated all of our medical and or religious exemptions. I'm not sure about the medical. So I really hope that, again, as a layperson, that seems like a big deal to me. The judge made some sort of reaction when he heard that, but how does that translate over into the legal standard? we'll see. So I want to just thank everybody for continuing to fight, follow along with our case, whether you're named in this case, whether you're fighting some other battle, whether you're just letting everybody out there know that no teachers have gotten their jobs back, we haven't gotten any back pay, and we haven't gotten any justice. So thank you, and stay free.
All right. I want to say, I want to say that, if there's anyone I think a lot of people have been following these cases, and this case in particular, even if somebody was just jumping in right now and listening to you, there's tons of like technical stuff that you were referring to and that you wouldn't even understand. And I think that just underscores the fact that this is a very like technical case, and underscores what you were saying about this being a very like legally technical case that doesn't, I think when I hear from you, when I hear from other petitioners in this case, and all the many other lawsuits that are going on regarding the mandates that are still going on now, people are really moved by the fundamental issues and not so much all the technical legal issues, the fundamental issues of, wow, wait, you can just create a new condition of employment where I have to take, have a medical procedure that has just been introduced. I think you're expressing some shock about that, and I hear that shock from a lot of people. So the I don't know. Speak to that issue of, just the technical weeds that everyone gets into versus the kind of the core issues that are really important to you and other petitioners.
I mean, this is the really tough thing about the law and about big government and about how legal precedent builds up over time and how lawyers like to make themselves work and how, all these city departments, they like to make themselves important by having layers of all these laws. So, I mean, I don't know really what there is to say other than there's always going to be a disconnect between what goes on in this building and real people in real life. And we can't lose sight of the real impacts on people. And you hope that the judges don't either. But we live in a system of laws, right? And at the end of the day, you have to work that system as much as you can. Listen, I would love to win. It would be life-changing to get my back pay. I'm not making nearly as much money. I know a lot of people were under great financial duress. Some people had to sell their homes. Some people had to move. A lot of people took jobs where they're just not making as much. They don't have as much security in terms of benefits. So I want to win so badly, but I also think the fight matters. It matters to challenge these people, to make them show up, to make them make their legal arguments that feel just quite honestly very empty inside. It matters. We have a couple gentlemen who came out to talk about the resolution they're trying to get the city council or at the state level. I think it's like city council and the state is connected to try to get some legislation through. There's many other lawsuits. So however it turns out, the fight matters.
Meanwhile, the corporate mainstream media wants you fighting over Donald Trump, the man who shut down our country and did vaccine socialism, and Kamala Harris. Did I say that right? I got a lot of slack for saying Kamala, not Kamala. Kamala. Anyways, you know who I'm talking about, of the party who did vaccine mandates. They're on the same team. They want the same things, and yet we're supposed to pretend between the red paint and the blue paint that there's something different to fight about, that they really care about our everyday lives. They don't. These are the battles. These are the fights, the ones on your local level that really impact you, that we need to be focused on. And let's keep this conversation going about how to break the duopoly by watching this video next.